change. We think those former colonial powers need to compensate for what they've done, what they've exploited, and we think particularly those countries have the same language, same culture in when they were colonized, so that we think it also can be good for immigrants, and we strongly propose this motion. So I will be talking about mainly three things. First thing, what's the context, qualification of context, and what people want to be immigrants, or what's happening, what's developed countries' incentive. And secondly, I will be talking about why what's the former colonial states done to this ex-colonial, and why we have like legitimacy to say that former colonial powers have responsibility. And thirdly, why immigrants who want to work in the former colonial powers will be able to have at least better situation. So let's clarify the situation. Those who want to be immigrants are those who are not be able to work, like those who are not satisfied with the context of what the ex-colonies now. For example, not good infrastructure or low wages, or like won't be able to work safely. Those are kind of unsatisfaction push them to go to other countries and will be able to have better treatment. And what's going on for the former colonial power is that they are not accepting not so much people. Why is that? Because they think it's troublesome. They think they have image of like, oh, it can be hard to do that. So that they are not accepting as much as people they can. So considering that, let's move on to what those former colonial states have done to those ex-colonies. So in the past, those colonial states have developed by exploiting those ex-colonial states. For example, in British exploited India, they destroyed the traditional factory of clothes and changed it to a cotton farm, so that those British people will be able to like make clothes in their country and will be able to get more profit. So that's why under the status quo, those Indians are like there will be monoculture in those ex-colonies, and there is like intervention, there is a war when they want to develop further, and we think that that's what they've done is still making huge gap between those states, and in those states citizens are suffering under the status quo because they won't be able to like seek for much better situation, much better wage, or much better working environment because of the prevention that's happening, that had happened and now still going on.
You know why?
Yes.
Why immigrants uniquely need to go to former colonial countries, even if many problems can happen in that
I will
country?
explain it later. So, firstly, why is it like justifiable? Why is it like former colonial powers need to be responsible? There's two things. Firstly, as I already explained, exploitation from those ex-colonial states is based on their wealth. But the reason why they can live better, the reason why they can live in like healthy status is that because they have developed the basis of those exploitations, so that those people living now are still getting the benefit from the past exploitation, we say. And secondly, people now living are still contributing to this structure, so that like when we want to make clothes, we still like import those cottons from the cotton, or like parts from those ex-colonial states, and we will make it to the product, and we will sell it in more high price, and those people are getting more money than those who are actually making parts or something. So that we are saying that under the status quo, people are still continuing to like exploit or like contributing to the structure. So, secondly, I will be answering the point of information coming from the opening opposition. They asked me why those immigrants particularly want to go to like that country. The answer is quite clear. Why like the ex-colonies people it's better to go to like those former colonial powers is that because they can see because when they colonized the country, they told their own words, like French people told them, the Moroccan people, the French, so that it's easier to like communicate. They have the same language they are using, so that and also they also have shared some culture. For example, in Vietnam, there's like bread that is called like French bread. So that we think like there's more shared culture and shared language. So that's why I'm saying it can be better for those immigrants as well. And also, I talked about like how those immigrants want to change their situation now happening in their country. We think there's two types of people who want to go to other country. First type is that those who are intelligent, want to be more intelligent people. And they want to learn about like what can be better for those what can be better for what can they do even when they are bettering their own country. And also we think there will be more people who just want to get more money in order to like escape from the worst conditions that happening in their own country and help family to survive by like because the country who have former colonial powers will be able to hire them more higher. So that in this situation, because principally we think we need to compensate and immigrants need to be able to like work, allowed to work there more. Very happy to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your speech. Next, we will call upon leader of opposition to not to guest Ms. Emily here.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We opposition side also concede that developed country which past exploit colonial country should compensate, apologize. But we believe that taking this motion doesn't mean that they apologize, but it does not the solution. And today I have mainly 3 points. The first point is that why it is not the apologize, and second point, how it is harmful for the ex-colonies people, ex-colonies countries, and thirdly, why adapting migrants is not unique solution. So let me move to my first point. So the powers who exploit the colonial countries past in their favor, just and they didn't care about the colonial countries, and they did everything for their profit. But now what they are doing is that, what they say is that we want to apologize, so we will accept migrants from your country, so that we have to follow. But please think about that. What is compensation? What is apologize? The people who can define is not the country who developed by exploiting, but people who are in the colonial country should determine that what is the compensation or apologize. And the opposition really, the government side really want to do is that they want just the fact that they apologize for those countries. They don't care that people in that ex-colonies country, and they think that they have the ex-colonies country for their should accept their proposal because they still think that they are superior to than those ex-colony countries. And this is the very reason it is not the apologize. They didn't change their attitude. They still want to make ex-colony countries to follow their decisions. And for those reasons, taking this motion doesn't mean that powers apologize for the ex-colony countries. So let me move to the second point. So how taking this motion is harmful for the ex-colony countries. So people living in those ex-colony countries know that fact that they are exploited by those countries, and maybe their parents or their grandparents are exploited as slaves, or maybe bullied by them. And if those people will go to those countries which exploited your home countries, of course you will think that you will have hatred, or you cannot communicate with those people well, because also people in those developed countries know that the fact that they exploited that people in the ex-colonial countries, and those people still have the narrative that they are superior to those ex-colonial countries. And for example, in the US, that they have exploited the African people and they developed. And please look at what is happening in the United States now. And they are still also white people in the high upper classes, and many high salary jobs are composed of the white people, so that they still think that white people are superior to the African Americans. So that's the reason that even if those people who are living in ex-colonial countries, those different countries, they cannot get highly job or healthy, because you know that please look at what is happening in the United States. White African Americans tend to take a job which is less salary, or hard time, or those kind of things. So same thing will happen. So that what they say that those people will get more good job or more healthy life will not happen by taking this motion. And so let me move to the third point. So why it is not unique solution. So as I said, what ex-colonials want is depend on those ex-colonial countries. Maybe it is financial aid or technological aid. So what they want and what they want to give, what want to have, should be determined by those ex-colonial countries, not by those countries who past exploited those countries. And they say that by taking migrants, they can propose that healthy life or good job. And as I said, it is not, but even if it is true, still it is not uniqueness of that. People go to those countries who exploited that country before, because even if people migrate to other countries, they can also get those kind of benefits. For example, if African people who are exploited by Americans, even if they can get good job in the America, the same thing can happen in the EU, for example. Even if they can, and so what the opening government mentioned is not relevant to this motion, so that their argument doesn't stand. So for those reasons, we believe that predominant countries still didn't change their attitude. They still think that they are superior to those ex-colonial countries, so that it is not apologize, not compensation. So that what is compensation is should be determined by those countries who are exploited before, and for those reasons, we are happy to oppose taking this motion.
Thank you, Leader Opposition, for the speech. Next speaker call upon Deputy Prime Minister to extend the case. Minister Evans, stay here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why those immigrants try to go out will try to go out to the out or their own country, even though it is very dangerous, and even though it is very scary for them, is because they want to improve their living standard that they are having in their own country, because they don't have any good job environment, or they don't have to go to suffer with those low wages in those ex-colonies, because it is still not developed, and still they will have to suffer, and at least they will have more opportunity or more potential to be to have a better living standard. And this is why those immigrants want to go out to their country, even if they know the risk that they will have. So three things in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to rebut to the point that the POI about why ex-colony states should go to that specific colonial country. And secondly, I'm going to talk about the incentive of the colonial country. And thirdly, I'm going to examine whether or not their harm overrides or the harm that we are talking. So let me move on to my first speech. So they say that in the POI why ex-colonial states should go to that specific colonial country. But when you think about it, it is the reality that the country in general would not like to accept a lot of immigrants, right? Just like in Japan, because there is there might be a more dangerous risk that immigrants will do, because of the norms that immigrants are different from us, and different, and they will commit crimes or something. So it is general that their accepting is very low. So when the immigrants are suffering in their own country and they want to go to other countries to have jobs, job opportunity and safety, the colonial country have the obligation to accept those immigrants because of the harmful things they did and because of the compensation, as my partner have clearly told you. And secondly, about the incentive of the colonial country. So they say that the colonial countries only have those bad incentives because they only want the reputation that they have apologized to those ex-colonies. So firstly, this is not true, because in general we are taught in the current society that wars that happened in the past it was not really good. I learned that Japan did very bad things toward those Korea, and the citizens living right now is not the citizens living in the past, and we know that it was not a good thing, and we know that we recognize that we did bad things. The people in the colonial countries did bad things to the ex-colonies in the past. So they will have a good incentive to some extent to accept those immigrants. And secondly, even if they don't have a good incentive to accept those immigrants, we don't see what is the problem, because those immigrants are really wanting to go to those countries, and it is their obligation to accept those countries. So what we don't think what is really the problem that the opposition side is saying. So I'm going to compare whether or not their harm is really bad compared to our harm. So what happens in their side is, as I have said before, people living in ex-colonies will suffer with low wages or bad working environment, not working environment. It is never going to, they're never going to opt out of the situation. Why? Because the aid that they get right now from charity is not enough for the country to prosper and prosper. They have to have those opportunity to work, and they will have to. They will need more of a business skill to actually prosper their own country. So just getting aid or just getting little help from those with the alternatives that they said, they were not going to opt out. The people suffering right now, it will not go opt out from the situation. But what they said that about our harm is because they will have the past that they were that there was a power imbalance existing. People will be exploited in the country. So we don't think. Okay.
So why you should drastically take migrants?
Because immigrants are suffering and they really want to go to that country, right? So at first you might take a person by their appearance. So people living in Japan might see those immigrants coming, and then people will meet those immigrants, and they might at first seem that they might be really dangerous or something. But when you get to know about him, for example, when you go to school with him or when you work with him, this reputation about appearance will shift and they will just we will just think about those people with their own personality and who they really are. We believe that the harm that they're talking about is really in a short-term harm, and we think these harms can be solved gradually because the perception of people is going to change. And even if we concede that their harm is very crucial, we would rather just take these risks than just be cautious and let those serious situations happening in ex-colonies ignore the situation that is happening in those ex-colonies. So what I want to say that even if we consider that there might be a hard harm toward those immigrants, as they are saying, that is just a short-term harm. We will look in the long run. Our side has more potential to increase the living standard of those people, immigrants who are very suffering in the status quo. Therefore, we are very happy to propose.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for the speech. Next, we are called for Deputy Leader Opposition to extend the case. Please have a check out.
Thank you, Chairperson. We concede to the fact that saying sorry to those ex-colonial countries is really important, but we also think that by by doing this motion, that is actually not going to say sorry to that country. Rather, that is actually causing huge and worst case of exploitation toward those countries. And we also cannot see the argument from the side government why we uniquely take this motion and why we should say sorry by uniquely taking this motion. And that is the biggest burden of proof that the side government has need to solve. However, unfortunately, they have never solved that problem. And we think without answering those kind of burden of proof, side government will never win to this debate. So today I'm mainly going to talk about 2 points. Firstly, I'm going to talk about how the situation is getting back the time when those ex-colonies were exploited by those former countries' power, and how it is against the goal of side government. And secondly, I'm going to talk about by drastically increase the number of the immigrants from ex-colonies, what kind of problem will happen, and why we think opening government's goal is not achievable by drastically increase the number of the immigrants. All my rebuttal is included in my speech. First point: how the situation is getting back to the time when those countries actually exploiting those ex-colonies countries. So we think the meaning of this motion is actually ex-colonies will be invited to the country of former colonies power. So this motion is actually clearly showing that former colonies power is stronger than those ex-colonies countries. So this is actually exactly saying that they are inferior than us and we are superior than us. That is the context of this motion. So what the governments are going to do is actually doing is that we are the former colonies country. That means we are strong. So we are happy to accept those weaker. That is the meaning that government side continuously to point it out. So we think by actually having this motion, what will happen after we are accepting those countries is actually exploitation of those kind of things, those kind of people. So side government has been saying like people will be live peacefully in that kind of situation because they share same languages, they share same culture. However, we cannot see even people share same languages, same culture. That doesn't mean that people will not be discriminated by those people, because there is huge difference between those people. Huge difference among those people. That is the race. We think that kind of race is actually going to cause some inferiority or superiority within that country, and actually those inferiority will cause some huge exploitation in the worst case scenario. So side government has been talking about like in the status quo, many former colonial power is actually exploiting those people in the aspect of those products and things like that. However, we think that is some indirect exploitation. But after taking this plan, what will happen to the society is actually direct exploitation can be definitely happening after taking this plan, and we think that is actually harming huge to those ex-colonies people. So. Actually, this motion is allowing direct exploitation by former colonial countries, because if people separate two sides, what will happen is very easy to imagine. Because I'm actually cooperating with my partner now, but in the daily life I'm very competitive with my partner, and also many people will feel competitive based on their race, based on their belongings. So that means actually making different people into one situation will cause huge inferiority or cause huge conflict, and we think by taking the motion that will definitely happen. So even if ex-colonies people will get the job in that kind, ex-colonies immigrants will be able to get job in that former colonies country, what will happen is actually their wage is lower than their wage is lower than the native people, or they will have less opportunity of education, or they will have isolation from the society. This kind of problem will definitely happening by taking this plan, and that they have never engaged to this point. And we think by taking this plan, what is actually happening is that it's just exploitation of immigrants, and by taking this motion, that means actually worsening the situation of those exploitation. That is the reason why we think that we should oppose this motion. So second point, by drastically increase the number of immigrants from ex-colonies, what kind of problem will happen, and why we think that the government goal will never achievable by taking this plan. So firstly, we think the goal coming from the government side is like we should giving the job to the immigrants, because we should giving the job to immigrants, and also we should make closer relationship with those ex-colonies country and former colonies country, and we should create peaceful society. However, we think this is not achievable, because in this society this is not utopia. What they are saying is just utopia based on the assumption. What we think about this problem is actually there is no main crossing relationship, because as I said in my first point, many people will think those immigrants are something inferior than their people. And what actually happening is just occupation from former colonial countries, and we think that is huge harm coming from the opposition side. And secondly, today's debate is drastically increase the number of immigrants. However, they have never engaged that point, and now we are going to engage that point. Drastically increase the number of immigrants. That means actually many immigrants can come into the society, and what will happen to the society is actually if there is many people, they will have the chance to argue what they think, which means more conflict with more conflict or more assertiveness will happening, and we think that is extremely harmful in this situation. Three harms will happen in our paradigm. Firstly, we think cultural conflict will definitely happen because those people will okay.
Can you force those people to be in worse situation now because they should not accept their inferiority, or because they'll be able to develop it in long term with ODAs?
I'm sorry, I could not understand what you mean. So let me back to my argument. So we think that three problems will happen. Firstly, cultural conflict will definitely happen because people, if those immigrants will say that this is our culture and do not disturb me, that will definitely cause some cultural conflict. And secondly, more importantly, culture separation will definitely happen because as I said in my first point, that many people think those people are inferiority. That means, for example, in India, actually India's culture was oppressed by British, and also as for the Aborigine, those cultures are also oppressed by the English. We think this culture of separation will definitely happen in apartheid, and sadly, most crucially, exploitation will definitely happen. So in this sense, we think we cannot see why we uniquely increase the number of immigrants in their paradigm. We think rather drastically, we think gradually is the best way to this way, because by gradually increase the number of the immigrants, actually we will be able to gradually create a society where there are people who live peacefully, and also we can, and also in this sense we think that as for the immigrants, our paradigm can definitely help those people, and our paradigm can definitely achieve the goal of the self-government. That's the reason why we oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your opposition to the stage. Next, I have to call on the government to present your extension. Mr. Seven, see here.
Chairperson, we think the debate has been hard to understand so far. Because OG, while they talked about all the bad things that happened to these, all the bad things that happened to former colonies in the past, they never explained why, because we did those bad things, or because those bad things are being done now, we necessarily have the obligation to take care of these, ex-colonies, right? So they never completed the principle, and they never talked about the uniqueness of why this cannot be achieved by other things like ODAs or giving financial aid or things like that. And on the other hand, while OO talked a lot about exploitation, first of all, they never really talked about what exploitation is in the first place. They just repeatedly said the word. And second of all, they never really talked about how all these problems are going to be solved in their paradigm. And they never really thought about it they never characterized the immigrants and talked about what the immigrants want and what they think is best for them. So, as closing government, we're going to mainly bring three extensions in this debate. First of all, we're going to complete the compensation principle that the opening government failed to complete. Why former colonial powers have the responsibility to take care of these ex-colonies simply because they stole the capacity from those ex-colonies in the past. And second of all, even if that does not stand, because these ex-colonies paid things like taxes, gave things like labor to these former colonial powers in the past, they also have the rights to receive things like social welfare and education rights. And second of all, we're going to talk about the uniqueness of accepting, taking this motion about how the things that can be achieved by drastically increasing the number of immigrants cannot be achieved by things like ODAs or financial aids, because simply some problems cannot be solved with money or cannot be solved quick enough, and there are too many sacrifices. And third, we're going to compare two paradigms and talk about which is really better for these immigrations. Before that, 3 rebuttals towards the opening opposition. So first of all, they talked about discrimination and how this is going to happen and severe social backlash towards these immigrants, right? But first of all, we think that this is extremely short term, right? Because discrimination will happen. We don't deny that discrimination might happen in the short term, but we think it's going to get better over time. Why? Because simply because we think, please wait a minute, simply because we think that there are going to be more over time, there's going to be more time for these people to get together and integrate into society, right? For example, immigrants are in one's country for a very long time and they start to create community in their schools, their children start to go to the same school together and things like that. With more interaction, we think that we can mitigate the worst effects of that discrimination. For example, in the United States right now, even though black people used to be slaves in the United States, we can see that at least compared to the past, there's a great deal of integration, and that white people and black people get along just fine, and that they're much more insignificant discrimination compared to the past, right? So we think that integration is possible in these countries, and we believe that even if it is not possible, it's still better in our paradigm. It's still better in our paradigm, right? Because we think that compared to immigrants who are shut inside of war-torn countries, fearing being raped or being hurt or killed every single day, the prospect of living in while discriminated, but at least having a stable job or receiving social benefits or not having to fear about losing your life every day is better in the perspective of these immigrants, right? And second of all, they talked about exploitation. First of all, they never really talked about what kind of exploitation they're talking about exactly, or how it's going to get worse under our paradigm, right? Because OG already kind of explained to you how exploitation is already happening, right? These countries are living in extremely poor conditions that are enforced by forcing these countries to stick to their agricultural, monocultural societies, right? So we think the current situation is more exploited, and we don't really see how it's going to get worse under our paradigm. Third of all, since they never really gave any alternatives, all the harms that they talked about aren't really going to get better on the opposition side, right? And so, moving on to my arguments. So firstly, we're going to complete the compensation principle from 2 perspectives. First of all, because these former colonial powers have the capacity, and second of all, about reciprocity and how, because they took taxes and because they took things like labor from these people from the past, these people also have the right to receive social benefits. Yes?
Your argument is based on the assumption that all immigrants will get along with receiving country. But in today's society, actually many conflict is happening because of immigrants, especially in the Europe. Please engage to this point.
Okay, so I will talk about it in my third point when I compare both of our paradigms. So first of all, let's talk about capacity. So we think that, as the OG explained, ex-colonies have exploited former colonies in the ex-colonial powers have exploited these countries in the past, right? And we think that because they exploited these countries in the past, in a sense, you could say that they have stolen the capacity from them, right? Because they stole the potential to evolve economically or to evolve socially. So they basically stole that capacity to take care of their citizens, for the country to take care of their citizens, or for them to financially support their citizens, right? And we believe that because they stole that capacity, they also have to take on that burden that they stole along with the capacity, simply because these former colonies do not have the capacity to take care of their citizens right now, right? Because they don't have the money, or they don't have the resources, or the security, or the social systems, right? So we have to think that because they stole the capacity, they have an obligation to give back. And second of all, and the point of taxes and things like that, we think that colonies, people from these ex-colonies, they paid taxes, they exported tons of things, they gave free labor, right? But they never received anything in return, and we think that they have a right to receive things in return, because in modern society, for example, when the elderly have spent their entire lives paying taxes, and then retired and are not paying taxes, and even if they're not paying taxes anymore, they still receive things like pensions, right? Because they once served that place and they still have the right to receive the benefits. And second of all, why this can only uniquely be achieved by accepting immigrants. So we think that this is for like 3 reasons. Because even if we give aid, so we think the alternative that they're talking about is like giving aid or money, right? So first of all, since the majority of these ex-colonies have corrupt governments, we think that even if we give money to them, those monies are just going to stay like in the upper part, and they're not going to really trickle down into the poor people's like pockets, right? And second of all, we think the social structure just isn't like completed yet. So even if we put more and more money into it, there's no social structure to make that money go like throughout the society. And third of all, we think that simply things like civil wars and like things like that cannot be solved through money. So even if we give them money, it's going to be ineffective. We're not really going to know the results. And even if it does work, it's going to take too long and it's going to sacrifice far too many people. And we think that because these people cannot create a social structure from themselves by scratch, it's more efficient to import these immigrants, to like put in these citizens from those countries and to give them things like social benefits and social welfare, because there are simply too many obstacles to create a social structure in those developing countries from scratch. And for these reasons, we believe that at least in our paradigm, these people are not exposed to the risk of debt, to the risk of like rape, and for these reasons, proud to propose.
Thank you, members of government, for the speech. Next, I call for members of opposition to participate in this.
This debate is not about this house believe that whether the product is better for the immigrants, but this debate is this house believe that former colonial powers should drastically increase the number of immigrants from the ex-colonies. This means that this debate is about what is the best way to take responsibility as a country which formerly have a colonial power. So we say that is the most crucial point and the most relevant point in this debate is there are two things, the two relevant things. That is, first is the subject who take responsibility is a country, and the second thing is the crucial point is drastically. We say drastically increase, not means we is the crucial point. So let's see the opening of opposition when we talk about the backlash to the immigrants, but we don't see the even if there is a backlash, but as the opening government told you that at least there are some benefit for the immigrant. So we don't think it's a crucial point of this debate. We think and furthermore about the backlash, like we say that we know that to some extent the backlash will be harsher by a drastically increasing, but we say that there are already some backlash, so we don't see any clear difference to the in the status quo and the after plan. And we say the clear difference between the caused by the drastically increasing is that whether the people whether the immigrants can organize against the native people. We think that is because in the status quo there are few people, few immigrants, but after plan there are many people who many immigrants, and they can organize against the backlash. And what happened after there is a backlash, that is what happened that they can organizing against the backlash is that a conflict in the status quo. There are just discrimination towards the immigrant just because they are minority, but after
there are many people, and they can organize, and they can conflict, they can, sometimes they can beat up their native people, and that's a crucial point. And this point, and because of this, we can see the clear harm for our country's citizens. We think our country's citizens, for example, if there is a Islamic people, Islamic immigrants in America, and yes, as you know, as the opening opposition said, there are some discrimination towards the Islam immigrants, and if Islamic immigrants can be organized against such a backlash, they will do the same thing. They will hurt, even if it's not a physical thing or it's mental thing. They will actually hurt our country's citizens. So I think that is a problem which can be it will be caused by the drastically increasing. So then this problem, how this problem become a direct opposing reason toward the debate is about, as I clearly told you, that the crucial point of this debate is about the subject. We say that who take responsibility is a country, and we say a country have a responsibility to protect their citizens. That is because the reason why we have a government, or we have a country by giving up our right, or giving up our freedom, is that to be protected by the government by giving the most crucial power toward the government, and thus the government should have a responsibility to protect their citizens. And no, thank you. And this at this point, what government should do as a compensation for the ex-colonies, that is not colonies. As you can see, there are many alternatives like ODA and also includes immigrants. And if we see these, when we see these ways to take responsibility, we should have the yes.
Do you think a colonial state can abandon people in serious situation now because of the risk that conflict will happen?
So we don't say such a thing, so I'm going to talk about that. So we don't say that this, okay. So as a government, the government should choose the way which can be compensation for the ex-colonies, and also which will not cause any harm towards the citizen. So immigrants. So by drastically increasing the immigrants cannot be the best way for the government, because as I told you that it actually hurts the citizens, and we think the best way to compensation for the government is that not only give money towards the country, but give the services, or build the schools, or give the services, and send many technical workers, and by giving that, we can actually take compensation. For these reasons, we are happy to oppose.
Thank you, members of the opposition for the speech. Next, I call from the speaker to the government to close the case and say it's here.
as a government we have 4 things to do. The first one is the rebuttal to what the member of opposition said. And the second one is pointed out the crucial mistake the opposition had made. And thirdly, the brief comparison between our paradigm and their paradigm. At fourth, we explain why is colonial government argument uniquely more important than the opening government argument. And I'm going to talk about this one by one. And the first one is about rebuttal to what the member of opposition has said, has told us. They say two things. The first one is this kind of drastic change results in a big conflict. However, that just organize the minority as group will create such kind of problem is very doubtful because their mechanism is too assertive, and we think, as example with Chinatown, just existing of Chinatown doesn't make any problem if in Japan social discrimination towards Chinese exists, and that's the status quo. So firstly, it's very likely to happen. And the second point is it might be happen if you consider their argument, but it's kind of very small thing, and just maybe calling for the right as democratic campaign or like that. They rarely attack, they rarely take action as using the power to the very harm to the society. And the surgery, at least compared to the civil war or starving to death because they have to live in developing country, what they say as harm is too little compared to what we present as a big harm. And that's why this argument is not so important. And second one is about the government have national responsibility to give pay for those who live in the ex-colonial country. However, these kind of people who live in ex-colonial country already paid for colonial power, and because they were colonies, they didn't give enough pay from this kind of colonial people, and also regardless of that, at least because they have a lot of pay to this kind of colonial country, at least like be protected by the nation being paid, being always paid, be continuous paid exists, and that's why there are meant to understand. And the second, let's move on to point it out to the what the opening opposition's crucial mistake. And as the member of government already told you, they never mention what, first of all, exploitation after taking motion is, or how. This is an important point because this is a big crush to this motion. How to save ex-colonial people? They didn't present any positive matter that help the save ex-colonial people. That is the most burden person in this debate. And also, they said that this motion will emerge as superiority inferiority relationship. But at least as I already told you, as a rebuttal towards the colonial opposition, when comparing to the harm, our harm that is about whether or not they die or not because they live in a very, very severe station in the status quo. So at least they didn't even show any context for us. We say we have to present the consequence. We have to protect the most burdened person that is predictable in our side of the house. And considering this point, at least what they present as harm is less important compared to our side of the house. And thirdly, let me explain why is colonial government's argument uniquely more important than the opening government argument. And the main contribution by the member of government is mainly 2 points. And the first one is about why just doing the thing is worth conception for the nation. Okay.
Your side argument seems to point out that former colonial countries should accept ex-colonies for their benefit. We think this attitude itself is showing that inferiority of ex-colonies country. How can you say this would be compensation for those countries?
Yes.
it's not a big problem when a project or not, and the rules, at least in the case where those who are reigned in the country who have reigned the past in the exploited law, and their citizens are still serving to death. In these cases, as a responsibility of the past government's failure, we have every responsibility to take this motion. And sorry, I have no time. Sorry. And let's go back to our argument. And first contribution by the member government is why just doing those things was compensating for the nation, and why this is important, because opening government argument is colonial power have exploited and destroyed in the past, and that is very serious, and that is the main reason why we should take this motion. And that is too assertive, and without our extension by the member government, this kind of principle doesn't stand so clearly, and that is the important contribution from member government. And the second one is the uniqueness of accepting immigrants. That is very important to substitute this motion, because it's about not giving money or not donating or like that, and that giving some equipment for their country, but accepting immigrants. And considering point, their explanation is very important as a contribution in order to win this kind of debate. And that is two contributions coming from the closing government. And in other words, let me be real comparison between our side of the house and their side of the house. Because discrimination problem might happen, we consider on the point. However, it's a very, very short time, as the member of government already told you. And it's not so big thing compared to what I said. And at least we can save the most vulnerable person we have to protect, that is who live in the ex-colonial state. And that's why I'm proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take out from the government. Next, I have to propose us to take out from the opposition to conclude your case. Please have a seat here.
By avoiding the drastically increase the number of immigrants, we can at least mitigate the risk for our own citizens, and we can protect our own citizens. We believe that is why we are really proud to oppose this motion. So in my speech, I'm gonna talk about three things. First one, I'm gonna point out the failure of each team. Secondly, I'm gonna talk about our extension, differentiate closing opposition from opening opposition, and thirdly, I'm gonna compare each bench. So first of all, failure. We believe that both opening side cannot win this debate because they never fulfill the body of proof of this debate, because opening government never explained why that drastically change is necessary, because they just said many people need it, but that doesn't mean this drastically change is necessary. And also, opening opposition never talked about unique harm of drastically change, and also they never talk about why former colonial powers as subject of this debate should about talking about this subject. So those each teams never be able to contribute to this debate. So, and closing government failed to explain why those other alternatives are not working, as my partner clearly told you. I'm gonna emphasize it later. So let me move on to our extension. So what OG said is that inferiority thing and drastically change goes to like argue conflict. So, but we believe the important point of this debate is that whether these former colonial powers should what should that subject do? So that, as my partner clearly told you, the country's like main aim and like first priority is to protect their own citizens, and so the first priority should be like that. And the compensation is also ultimately same goal, because if you do not compensate like too much, compensation too much, like maybe they're like more labor and criticized by international things and something like that, and that could also be the harm for our own citizens. So that is the one extension that our clearly lacks. And also about the drastically change, unique harm of drastically change, like they never clearly shows the mechanism of like mini conflict, because as my partner clearly told you, the situation, though their mechanism cannot really like changed by this drastic change. But as my partner clearly told you, much more conflict will occur if by this drastic change, because first of all, because they can get together and have like weak power to make maybe attack to those cities, and also our own citizens can feel that is can be like invasion, because from the country that should have like some kind of hostility to us as is like coming to our country. So that means that more and harsher conflict is really likely to occur. Yes.
Immigrants, which is composing little portion in the country and need to work hard every day in order to help survival of family, do you think they will still have incentive to actually fight or do the conflict against those people?
Because compared to in the status quo, the risk is much higher, and as my told you, both from the view of those who come immigrant, and also from those living in this society, and so the effect of conflict is also easy to be harsher, and that extension is really crucial in this debate, because the opposition's argument is based on the fact that our citizens can get harmed by accepting a lot of immigrants, the drastic increase of the number of immigrants. So, for these reasons, closing opposition clearly overcome the opening opposition. So, finally, let me compare each benches. So, there are two kind of class points. First one is that it is that harm or benefit is like short term or long term, but it is actually not that important in this debate, because governments never explain why the long term benefit for like outsiders of our country is much important than safety of our own citizens. On the other hand, we clearly told you that no, thank you. Like clear role of the principal role of the country or government, and why it is justifiable for country or government to prioritize our citizens over like other countries people. So, and second point is that whether like about the compensation. Yeah, yes, we consider compensation is like not necessary, but because like there is alternative. CEO said that when it comes to money, like it is uncertain that how that money is used, but still there are still other ways, because maybe we can make like schools for education to help the development or something like that. And so there still be alternative, and as long as there is alternative, it is justifiable to avoid the way which could harm our citizens. So, in conclusion, and because this motion's subject is for what former colonial power should do, and we are the only team that actually oppose or deny this motion. That is why we strongly believe that we should take this motion, should take this debate. Thank you.